All right. Good evening, everybody. Just let me know if you can hear me okay. All right. Thumbs up. Good to be with you all this evening. We'll go ahead and join palms as we get started here. And you can repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Okay. Again, good evening, all. It's not morning time. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. I'd like to just start with a question. Gives people time to settle in before we start meditation, and also an opportunity for people to communicate a little bit. But I think the question I'll start with tonight is, do you have difficulty finding gratitude for everything that you have in your life right now? If you're new to joining us or new to YouTube, there's a chat box there on your screen. Feel free to reply with anything you'd like. You could reply yes, you could reply no, you could not reply, you could write a book. But again, the question is, do you have difficulty finding gratitude for what you have right now? Maybe I should type that in also for people. You have difficulty finding gratitude for all you have now. That's something that often I find people don't realize, that everything that you have in your life right now, maybe it's your physical health, maybe it's your emotional health and mental health, maybe it's use of your legs, maybe it's the ability to speak, maybe it's the ability to eat, maybe it's the ability to see someone, to talk to someone. All of these things that we have in our lives right now someday won't be there. And very often we find ourselves in the future missing things that we actually have the ability to do right now. So there are things in the future that you can do right now that maybe you won't be able to do in the future. Yet often we might complain about them in the present moment. This isn't working how I want it to. This isn't this way. This isn't that way. Whatever it might be. But in the future, we may look back on your ability to do things today, and you may really miss this. So it's something to reflect on. I think it's very important to me as a practitioner to begin to, or just to remind myself each day to stop and recognize that if there's moments where you're doing things that maybe you don't want to do, you may miss those things someday in the future. So, do you have difficulty finding gratitude? I see a yes. Gratitude for what I have is keeping me sane at the moment. Absolutely. Carla agrees with Denise. I don't have difficulty, but I easily forget it. Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it is just a matter of not taking time to recognize it, that it's there, but we get so wrapped up in so many things that we forget. What else? Difficulty finding gratitude. I do take a lot for granted. Absolutely. I find most people do. I find a lot of people do. I think that when we get wrapped up in, anger, sadness, depression, things like that, it's because we're not stopping to recognize all the things that we have in our lives and all that we should and can be grateful for. Because many of us, especially if you're sitting here, we have so many things to appreciate. I forget when it gets buried under all of the crud, but when I'm reminded, it comes back. Thank you for reminding me. Absolutely. I'm just here to remind us of things. That's really it. I've been reading a book related to grief, and if you set goals to write down a few a day, you'll look for them more, silver linings, and you'll find them. Absolutely. It's a great practice sometimes. And, like Samir said, for him, it's not difficult, but he easily forgets. But if you make it a practice to stop and write things down, as a habit, then it really forces you to reflect on these things. Red, left to tell, you will be abundantly grateful for having to just sit in your house. Absolutely. And that's another thing, for those of you who have a house, if you're, grateful that you have a roof over your head right now, that you have shelter, that you have running water, that you have electricity, that you have clothes, all of these things that we take for granted. Write down a few items of gratitude, that is, yes. Making it a habit, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big, I think, part of any sort of practice that we learn or skill that we pick up along the way. It's really easy to sit in classes like this or meditation or, read books or whatever it might be. And we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. And then the next day there's another great idea. And so I've seen people over the years through Buddhist practice, through meditation, their spiritual journey, just kind of be these people that really just constantly are pulling in new teachings or pieces of information or skills, but not integrating or implementing any of them into their lives. So I think we want to be careful with that as well. That it's not about, how much Dharma we can learn intellectually or philosophically, but how much of it can we put into our lives? How much of the teachings can we practice? So anything else about difficulty finding gratitude before we settle in and start here? All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll start with the meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin, especially for those who might be joining the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or is it not working? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, outside, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the sounds. So most important with the practice of meditation is don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. Posture, you want to be comfortable if you're on a cushion or a chair, just trying to sit up straight. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. I'll suggest closing the eyes if that works for you, or slightly open. Mouth will be open or closed. I will guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions, simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. And gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, and compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize now if it's quiet, and calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply from, or what we believe in and where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. We react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. For most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. You feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun, but it's free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice. And I started talking tonight about gratitude because I've found that when we have gratitude for all that we do have in our lives, this practice becomes much easier. It's really easy to be in a negative state of mind and place of anger, or depression, or frustration, or whatever it might be. But if you come from a place of gratitude and appreciation, then your day is more pleasant. So whatever you have to do, if you have to, stop and write it down a few times a day, or once a day, or 5 times a day, or take time before you sleep to just have, a little bit of reflection on gratitude and appreciation, might make things easier. So this time, I always like to use the rest of the evening for questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address, and we'll go from there. So if you are here for the first time, again, welcome. There's a chat box there on your screen. You can go ahead and type a question in, anything related to meditation, Buddhist practice, and I'd be happy to. Thoughts, questions. Challenges, difficulties, or you all got it. Do you have any tips for mindfulness throughout the day other than stopping to meditate specifically, where it helps one to set, focus, and breathe to make the mind calm, steady, and more simple? Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I want to be. Let's see. I'm a big post-it person. Maybe little tips at the computer in your car, etc. So I want to back up a little bit. And a lot of people know me well. I'm not a big fan of the word mindfulness. Potentially, depending upon how we use the word mindfulness. And I want to address that first, Katie, and then very specifically to your question, because I do have some things to share that I think hopefully will help. But so the first part of your question is, do you have any tips for mindfulness throughout the day other than stopping to meditate specifically? And there was Karma Lekshi Sama was a Tibetan Buddhist nun, friend of mine for years, and we've had her teach a lot. There's this huge mindfulness movement that has taken over this country, especially the last 10 years. And on one hand, it's great. Has everybody talking about mindfulness and wanting to be more mindful and focused on mindfulness and spending a fortune on mindfulness. That's not the good part. I say that sarcastically, but that's the truth, is people are paying all this money for mindfulness. And mindfulness is very important in the Buddhist teachings. But what I want to share, what Lekshi said, and I loved how she said it, which is mindfulness without moral and ethical behavior doesn't get you too far. So anytime people bring up the word mindfulness or throw the word mindfulness out there, I always want to drive it back to moral, ethical behavior. Because if you look at the second part of your question, to make the mind calm, steady, and more simple. So if your goal or objective based on your question is to make the mind more calm, steady, and simple, mindfulness has nothing to do with that. I get it in theory. The way mindfulness is taught in this Western culture is our minds are a mess, everything is scattered, let's just be more mindful and everything's going to be phenomenal. I hate that because I think it doesn't do justice to what the Buddha was actually teaching. And I think it's become this very westernized way of approaching mindfulness that if I'm just more mindful, everything's going to be great. As Lekshi said, you could mindfully rob a bank. You could mindfully kill someone. So it's not just about mindfulness. And if you look at your question again, if the objective is to make the mind calm, steady, and more simple, then look at what the Buddha taught. Don't worry about mindfulness for a minute. There's the Eightfold Path. And to sum up in brief, the Four Noble Truths, the first one the Buddha said is life is filled with dukkha, suffering. The second one he said is the cause of suffering. The third one he said is the ending of suffering, liberation, nirvana, freedom from suffering. That's the good news. And the fourth one is the path out of suffering. And the Buddha taught the Eightfold Path. And the Buddha's Eightfold Path is the correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Now, these are taught in order very specifically by the Buddha. Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Where's mindfulness on this list? It's 7th. And concentration, 8th. So the mindfulness aspect, the concentration aspect, the meditative aspect is last. But what we tend to want to do, and Katie, I'm just bringing it up, you're not the only one. This question comes up constantly, is we tend to turn to meditation and Buddhism and think my life is a mess. I'm a mean, angry person all day long. I am greedy. I am selfish. I think about me all day long. I'm constantly busy, wrapped up doing a bunch of crap I don't like. I'm never calm. I'm never relaxed. I'm never steady. Everything in my head is a big nightmare. So I want to be mindful and fix it. It doesn't work that way. Mindfulness doesn't fix anything. If your mind is a mess, mindfulness is just going to make you aware of your mind that is a mess. If your life is a mess, mindfulness is just going to make you aware of your life that's a mess. If you want to be, I keep looking at the exact words you used, if you want to be calm, steady, and more simple, then change your life. Look at the things that you do in your life that don't make you calm and stop doing them. That has nothing to do with mindfulness. Look at the things that make you unsteady in your life and stop doing them. That has nothing to do with mindfulness. Look at the things in your life that keep it from being simple, that make your life complicated, and stop doing those things. Again, nothing to do with mindfulness. So it's always hard when I'm responding to questions, staring at a screen, and I'm looking at words, and there's no emotion, there's no expression, there's no interaction, banter back and forth, because I could be completely missing the boat on what you're actually even talking about. But I never really respond to questions directly anyways, because usually, hopefully what I'm sharing can, be addressed or taken in very broadly. But mindfulness is important to become aware of the present moment. And you can stop throughout your day and take deep breaths and become mindful of the present moment and find gratitude and appreciation in the present moment. But the only way that your life is going to become calm and steady and simple, I keep forgetting the last one. Calm, steady, and simple is when you change your life. That's the response. So I hope that's helpful. Quickly. Yeah, the Eightfold Path: views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. And you can just Google Eightfold Path. It's all right there. Let's see. I have gotten out of my daily meditation routine, missing the calm. Yeah, I mean, we lose our habits, we break them constantly. Uh, and good habits or bad habits. So try to think of meditation just as brushing your teeth. And it's something you do, you don't skip it. You do it every day because you understand how important it is. So do whatever you can. Put reminders on your phone, reminders on your wall, whatever you can do to remind yourself to do a meditation practice every day, Jessica. And it's extremely helpful because it will keep you calm. The meditation, the mindfulness practice will help. But it's like when you have a headache and you pop 2 Advil and the headache goes away. And then the next day you get a headache comes back, and we spend the rest of our lives taking 2 Advil to get rid of our headache, as opposed to looking at what is the cause of the headache. So that's where, to me, mindfulness and concentration, the meditative aspect, is the aspirin. But we're not looking at what's causing the headache. Thank you for the meditation. What is your advice for beginners and how to proceed to establish a daily meditation practice? Just practice. Yes, exactly. Just do it. Cynthia shared. I don't have great advice for developing a daily practice other than reminding yourself that why did you come to the practice to begin with? What drove you to sit here tonight, or whatever time you sit and do a meditation practice ever? It's often something along the lines of the stress, the anger, the anxiety, the sadness, depression, the Buddha's what he calls dukkha, which is suffering, all of these emotions that we experience. We can only take them for so long before we realize we need to have a different way to live our lives. So my advice, I guess, is to really just remind yourself, what was your original intention for why you wanted to do a meditation practice? And don't forget that. If you need to write that down and read it every day, remind yourself why you're doing this practice, for you, for others, for family, for friends, for loved ones, for strangers. Really remind yourself what your motivation and inspiration is to practice. Because if you hold that at the center of your heart and mind, your motivation, your inspiration to practice, that will drive you to sit and do a practice every day, hopefully. Other than that, in a practical sense, it's just, putting a reminder on your phone, calendar, wherever it is, so you see it every day. So hopefully that's helpful. Exactly. Yeah. Think of thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. Just reminders. Thanks. Needed the aspirin analogy. Need to shake things up big time. Yeah, definitely. I think we often get lost sometimes and forget that we have created whatever emotion we're dealing with, if it's anger, if it's sadness, depression. For me, growing up as a tremendously angry and depressed kid for a majority of my life, that's what drove me to this practice, is that I was recognizing I could only be angry and depressed for so long, and I needed a drastic change in what I was doing. And all the meditation in the world, another great expression of mine, is an angry person who meditates, or one that I've learned over the years, is an angry person that meditates is just an angry meditator. So we can't just expect the meditation to fix the things. We have to internalize what is it in our life that is causing the anger, the sadness, depression, and we have to really dig deep and work hard to cultivate changing our routine and our way of life. And I had to drastically change the way I was living my life. I mean, completely blew it up, truly. For me, it was, living this young kind of hotshot consulting life, thinking that if I made money and bought lots of stuff, I'd be happy, to leaving all of that and moving to a monastery and living like with Zen monks every day in a Taiwanese monastery. So I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody just drop out and go live in a monastery. It's not practical. But I do suggest you explore, especially for anyone who's stuck in kind of this really deep just dukkha, discomfort, suffering, angst, depression, whatever it might be, really shatter a lot of things in your life that are uncomfortable to do, and allow things that are, part of your life maybe to die so new things can grow. And that's not easy. That's not comfortable. It's not fun. But the alternative is sitting with this emotion that keeps destroying us, and that's worse. So sometimes being uncomfortable in letting go of bad habits or behaviors or people or whatever it is in our lives is really important for us to start new. Um, and again, that's kind of coming back to the headache of what is the cause of the headache. With regard to the Eightfold Path, right view, how do we stay on right conduct and right conduct without judging others? I find that just judging others is a very lonely place. Yeah, judgment itself is very lonely because it's the self's view of someone else. So often we judge ourselves. That's often the first challenge is we judge ourselves. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. I'm not, all the words you could fill in there. But it's a constant critique and judgment of selves that say, I'm not this or I'm not that. And when we work to abandon that, I think abandoning that judgment is really coming back to the first part of the question of right view. Right view is, for me, looking at what is our intention. And is the intention behind our actions driven by greed, anger, ignorance, which is the cause of our suffering? Or is the intention behind our actions driven by generosity, compassion, and wisdom? And right view really is where that begins, when we begin to understand that we are this temporary being that has come together for a period of time, that our clock is ticking. Every moment we don't know when our day is up, when our time is up. But we have these views that we are so important. And I'm not saying that we're not important or that you need to ignore yourself, but the view that you are this permanent self and that you're going to live to whatever age and that everything's just going to fall in place however you. Every moment is a gift. Every moment we spend. I don't know if you can still hear me. It says connection. So Samir, back to your question on right view. I don't look at view as judgments. I look at right view as a way of living our lives that understands that life is greater than you. It's not about just you. So it's really going beyond judgment of self and others and recognizing that we're all these sentient beings in this existence together. Every human, every animal, every insect, we're all in this experience together. And we're all equally important. And I think for me, understanding right view is to recognize that my view is not more important than anybody else's view, nor is it more correct than anyone else's view. So if you can hold on and really find some balance or some, I think, grounding in that your view is simply your own perception of reality, then the judgments will become less and less. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, and yes. Other questions? Good questions. Oh, no, I just saw the last part. Need to shake things up big time. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't even see that part yet. But that's exactly what I was talking about, is really just, shaking up the way potentially that we're living our lives now to be able to experience a better way of life. Other thoughts, questions? We've got a few more minutes here before we wrap up. Yes. Samir, lead with compassion. Chogyam Trungpa is a great Buddhist teacher, and a lot of his teachings are around groundlessness. And for me, this is fearlessness. And I think that this practice requires a lot of overcoming your own fears, whatever those fears may be. It's been hard socially because of the pandemic. I find myself on social media a lot more, which is not good for mental health. Yeah, social media is not good for anyone's health, especially, the way things are these days. And, I guess depending upon how you use social media, it can be okay, but most people don't have the mental, emotional discipline to use social media in a way that's not going to drive you completely insane. So, sometimes it's a matter of just like putting yourself on a timeout from social media and restricting things, because social media very often just pulls you back into all the madness that one may need to get away from. And that it kind of ties into what I was talking about with fear, which is that when we get so stuck in fear, especially in the pandemic right now, and I'm not talking about the health concerns. I think it's very wise to be aware of the safety and health concerns that are out there, but to also try not to live afraid. Afraid of being sick, afraid of dying, afraid of being alone, afraid of not achieving all your goals, afraid of whatever it might be. People get so wrapped up in fears. And this practice to me is about moving beyond fears and just focusing on, what am I doing? What is my intention? What are my thoughts? What are my words? What are my actions? What am I doing in my life? How am I spending my day? And social media can consume a lot of your day. And especially if you're one, like many of you here, I know, and I'm sure Cynthia won't mind me calling her out, because I would if we were in person anyways. But, probably a couple of years ago, I said to Cynthia, you're spending X amount of hours watching TV. If you spend less, you'll spend less time frustrated or watching the news. Sorry. If you spend less, then you'll spend less time angry and annoyed. So eventually Cynthia began to watch less news and, less time being miserable. So same thing with the social media. If we spend less time at places, physically, mentally, emotionally, make us miserable, then we'll feel better. And I also think that this pandemic has hit people hard in many ways, but it also creates opportunities in a positive way, that you can learn things about yourself. You can explore things, instead of spending 3 hours watching crap on the news or on TV, you could spend 3 hours watching documentaries on something that's educational. Instead of spending 3 hours, chatting, gossiping and slander, and, lost in hateful speech and dialogue and attacking people, you could spend 3 hours, looking at videos of goats, baby goats, and puppies. So it's really where your mind goes, where your attention goes. It's a great Zen expression to a worm in horseradish. The world is horseradish. So be aware of that. Social media is challenging to use for good sometimes, pandemic or not. Disenchantment is key for that one. Yeah, definitely. And again, I think, people used to ask me a lot, though, I think the Buddha would have used social media. And I think, yes, I personally think he would have. It's just, it would have been used in a very wise way. And I think social media can be used and consumed very wisely. And it can also become very dangerous. So it just depends. I think that's where the Buddhist teachings on the middle path and the balance is important, to find a balance with everything that we consume. Where people get wrapped up in others' truths when we should be searching with our own selves to find our truth. Yeah, definitely. It's hard when other people's information is being thrown at us constantly. Cynthia, I watch no news. My apologies. I went from a lot of news to less news, and I misspoke. Cynthia, for the record, watches no news, and I'm so happy for Cynthia, and Cynthia is so happy for Cynthia. Um, Marisa, yes, we have two on the no news bandwagon. So, all right, I think I'll wrap up on that because it's about 8 o'clock, and there's probably news on a lot if you want to watch. uh, been a few weeks, so happy to be here with everyone tonight. I get all my news from here. All right, Chuck. Well, I'll make sure I chime in with a bit of news. So, all right, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Chuck Lee during his time of suffering. May he be of good health. May all be of good health and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. Nice to sit with you all. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up the temple, Dharma Bum Temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. That's you. So thanks for showing up. Every night we have different classes. Travis leads Dharma Bum Basics and Meditation Tuesday. Alex does a Metta Loving Kindness on Wednesday. Or I'm sorry, Travis is on Thursday. Alex is on Wednesday. And then I do Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings on YouTube. Everything else we do is on the Zoom classes, recovery classes, teenage kids classes, college classes. Monday through Friday, we sit 8 and 8:30. So if you're looking to maybe disrupt your routine, 8 and 8:30, you can join and sit silently for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. The website has the schedule. Please be safe. Stay home as much as possible. Wear a mask. If I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds. For me, that's always been the heart of this practice. So again, thank you all for joining us. Chuck, sorry I couldn't fill you in on more news, but I'll come prepared next time. So thank you all.